To talk about generative AI models and the impact they are beginning to have in the real world, Hoifeng Poon will host a panel discussion with a distinguished group of experts. Representing our Microsoft research is Ava Amini and Lily Chia. They are joined by Microsoft's Chief Scientific Officer in Health and Life Sciences, Dr. Matthew Lundgren, who is also a practicing physician and maintains research and teaching roles at Stanford University in AI and medicine. To round out a stellar panel, Providence's Chief Medical Officer, Carlo Bifukal, joins to provide another voice on the real-world implementation of generative AI in clinical settings. Back to you, Hoifeng.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Microsoft Research Forum. Today, we'll have a very exciting panel discussing AI for precision health. As we all know, there are two fundamental challenges in today's healthcare, right? So first, medicine can be very imprecise and doesn't work for the patient, right? So for example, immunotherapy is the cutting-edge cancer treatment today, and indeed, you have some of the blockbuster drug like Keytruda that can, work miracle for some of the late-stage cancer patients. But overall, the survival is still hovering around 20-30%, right? And then second challenge is like high-quality healthcare is just too expensive and very hard to scale, right? So for example, even in the US, 85% of cancer patients actually are treated in this rural or community hospital that simply doesn't have the kind of resource and care quality like some of those more comprehensive cancer centers like Mayo or Memorial Sloan, right? So, and sometimes disparity in, simply information access can be life or death. So what's really exciting these days is that the Gen AI revolution really bring us unprecedented capability to start being sort of like, you can think about it as learning the language of nature to patients, right? And that start to give us some very powerful tool to start accelerating biomedical discovery so we can drastically improve the healthcare quality and also create opportunity for us to drastically reduce the healthcare cost. So now we can democratize those high quality healthcare for everyone. So now, of course, this undertaking is really a kind of moonshot aspiration and really take way more than a village, right? So at Microsoft Research, we are super blessed with the privilege to actually have foster deep collaboration across amazing researchers around the globe, and also with our beloved health and life science product division, and also with key external stakeholders such as large healthcare systems. So you will see that this panel really is a perfect reflection of that deep collaboration across the board. So we will start with a quick intro by every panelist about who they are and what's their charter, what gets them excited these days, and also we'll dive deep into the key opportunities and challenges. So maybe Ava, can we start with you?
Absolutely. Yeah, my name is Ava Amini. I'm a senior researcher at Microsoft Research based in the New England lab and also working closely with Health Futures. My passion is really in building new AI methods to accelerate our ability to understand biology and also to design biology. And this is rooted in kind of a fundamental curiosity about bringing the power of computation and quantitative science and engineering to the biological world so that we can learn the language at which biology operates. And for me personally, I'm most interested in how behavior at the cellular level arises from the interactions and activity of individual biomolecules, how these processes become dysregulated in disease, and how we can understand those regulations and dysregulations to now develop more effective and more personalized treatments. So really thinking about the vision of bringing the power of AI to unlock new biological insight so that we can move towards our ability to create new therapies and better interventions that hopefully could be implemented in the clinic and at the patient level.
Well, that's fascinating. Like you are learning the language of biomolecules and so forth, right? And really the fundamental kind of biology. So Lily, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Lily Chiu, an Assistant Managing Director at Microsoft Research Asia, mainly responsible for leading Shanghai Lab. Our mission is to develop sensing and machine learning for healthcare. Complementary to our focus is to learn the language of patients outside hospitals. With the rise of chronic diseases, unpredictable health crises, and the demand for personalized treatment, traditional hospital-based monitoring is no longer sufficient. Consider a patient with a cardiovascular disease who visits hospital just a few times a year. On the surface, everything seems fine: stable blood pressure, a steady heart rate, and normal respiration pattern. Yet between these breaks, subtle fluctuations can occur, warning signs that remain invisible until they escalate into life-threatening emergencies. For me, this scenario isn't an abstract concept, but a painful reality. I lost both my mom and my grandmom to cardiovascular disease while they were at home. Their passing revealed how critical it is to have better monitoring tools that extend beyond hospital walls. Their memory was what motivated me to explore and develop in-home continuous monitoring tool to prevent similar heartbreaking loss and protect patients even when they are not at hospital. Advancements in sensing and AI could make it possible to track an individual's health in real time. By continuously monitoring vital signs and body movement, healthcare providers can gain a deep and more comprehensive and accurate understanding of a patient's condition. This could yield many benefits. Here I just highlight 3 of them. First, we could do early detection and prevention. With continuous monitoring, deviation from normal health parameters can be detected early, allowing for timely intervention before a condition gets worse. Second, personalized and adaptive treatment plans is possible. No 2 patients are the same. Precision medicine requires individualized treatment plan based on real-time data. Continuous monitoring allows doctors to tailor their medication and lifestyle recommendation and therapy strategies based on actual patient behavior and physiological response over time. Moreover, we could enhance the patient engagement and quality of life while reducing healthcare costs. When patients are equipped with real-time insight into their own health, they become more engaged into their well-being. Wearable devices and mobile apps can empower individuals to make informed lifestyle choices, adhere to treatment plan, and actively participate in managing their health. This could not only improve patient outcome, but also significantly cut down healthcare costs.
Awesome. Well, that's really appreciate, Lily, you sharing some of those kind of really powerful personal story, right? So that actually remind me, so many years ago, one of my colleague share also a very kind of like inspiring story. It's like she has a brother, right, who was diagnosed with cancer in actually Eastern Washington, Spokane specifically, and they find a mutation that actually renders standard of care doesn't work. And so normally the prognosis is like 6 months, right? So and my colleague persuade him to literally drive like 2 hours west to Fred Hutch, and there they find a matching trial that actually put the cancer in remission, right? So that kind of sort of really powerful story is like, how can we actually democratize that kind of, right, to everyone so that it doesn't just, so on that note, actually, Carlo, do you want to go next, right? Because you are so really deep in the trenches.
Yeah, thank you, Alfong. Indeed, in the trenches. Yeah, so my background, physician scientist, currently serving as CMO of Providence Genomics. For people unfamiliar with Providence, a big healthcare network on the West Coast. And our program's focus is really to bring precision medicine and personalized medicine to cancer patients in the context of that kind of very diverse network. On the research side, my work is really focused on genomics, but also spatial biology and AI. And the approach is really translational. I think we try to bring all these modalities to impact patient care in the future and current patient care, if we whenever we can. Specifically for this, I think I had the fortune of working with you, Hoifung, and the Microsoft research team now, I think for 6 years. And I think we had
Time
significant progress, right, in this effort. I think we had very interesting applications of NLP and AI in the real-world evidence kind of space, clinical trial matching, and we have built an ecosystem which extends to precision medicine with solutions like molecular tumor boards and other things that really hopefully impact patient care. I think what I'm most excited currently is really an opportunity we had recently, which is focused on making a paradigm shift in pathology. We brought generative AI and large foundation models to that field. I think we were one of the first groups to do so with a very large open weight model called Prof Gigapat. I think it's approximately more than 1 billion parameters, 1.3 billion if I remember correctly. Very impressively, we had 500,000 downloads on Hugging Face. So I'm super surprised by the impact and, very pleased by the impact that this is having. And for the future, working on integrating all these modalities, multimodalities, hopefully, with things like genomics, spatial biology, and so forth.
Yeah, thanks so much, Carlo. Obviously, the disclaimer is that we have this super privilege to be able to work with you, right? Exactly like when I do the math, yes, 6 years, right? And oftentimes, like the challenge is like, yes, we are all machine learning and modeling folks, right? And then we often think about machine learning and modeling, but also there is a lots of groundwork, right? How do we actually get the data, get the compute set up, also adhere to privacy compliance, make sure everything is responsible, and then having this super privilege to be able to really deeply collaborate with you. And also, I think that also lead to a very exciting prospect is that how can we kind of take the learning from like this, some of this kind of deep partnership, right? And really try to start to impact, can we start to impact millions of, if not billions of patients, right? And for that, we need scaling. So Matt, no pressure, but really want to get your perspective here.
It's all about scale, Hoifung. So I'm Matt Lundgren. I'm the Chief Scientific Officer at Microsoft Health and Life Sciences. And I've kind of got an interesting role so my background, academic, physician, and, spend a lot of time sort of in both the clinical world, but, also in the core research world, right? And sort of bridging those gaps kind of started to become a pattern, I guess, in my career. But now, I kind of do the same thing, but to your point, Hoifung, it's definitely a scaled effort. And so we are a group of data scientists, PMs, and obviously some engineers that really are focused on working bidirectionally across both the organization and then externally with partners. And what we're looking to do is we're saying, okay, what are the core problems in healthcare? Where are the gaps in some of the technologies that we see today? And then what kind of innovations are happening that might, fill those gaps? But the bidirectional aspect is also kind of translating some of those gaps or opportunities in the healthcare space over to some of the core innovation areas to say, hey, I think if you had a technique that could actually address this, we could actually make a huge difference. And I think what's really wonderful about working in sort of this collaborative group is a great example is you've heard sort of from the biologic discovery, the sort of more clinical translational, you're hearing about how genomics and images kind of come into play. There's sort of a beautiful story here about all these modalities kind of coming together, to your point, Hoifung, to learn the language of life or learn the language of biology. And I think we're in a really interesting moment where, we recognize that these powerful language models are, they're very competent across a lot of different concepts and particularly in the tech space. And where we see the opportunity is really to translate that ability to, easily access the information, process the information, potentially even enrich the information, but also leverage the data that we know has a lot more information about our patients. And that's obviously clinically in the imaging space. And so I'm just delighted about the opportunities to come. And again, I think this effort that we've talked about, the model that Carlo referenced is currently on the Azure catalog across many other modalities as well, and really unlocks the opportunities for the healthcare developer ecosystem to say, hey, you've actually got me pretty close to my goal line here with some of the things you developed. Let me take it to the finish line and start to translate that at scale. And that's exactly what we're seeing.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Matt. And really amazing to see your leaderships and drive to actually get a lot of this kind of, model, right, to start being able to democratizing them in the AI foundries and so forth, to really start to put them in the hands, right, for folks who can start playing with those model and explore applications. So super exciting. So one theme I kind of like really kind of like hearing and seeing is like there is sort of like a lot of this kind of like challenges is like as Matt you just mentioned, right? Like in the text modality, we kind of learn relatively quite deeply, right? But on the other hand, there are many biomedical modality that are non-text modality that they seem to have a lot of unique challenges. So Awa, I want to kind of get back to you. It's like you and team have done some really amazing work, right? As you mentioned on biomolecule, like proteins and so forth. So like what's your top of mind in terms of some of the key challenges that you see, and what are some of the learning you have find, right?
Yeah, I think for me, what's really top of mind connects back to this theme of bidirectionality that Matt and Carlo and Louis and yourself, Hoifang, have raised. And that's really core for how we think about, AI in this space of biology and how we actually operationalize that. So it's not sufficient to just develop competent models that can learn over protein sequences or protein structures or other biological modalities. What we really care about in this next phase is how do we bring those models to translation to unlock real biological discovery. And so as a step towards doing this, we're really excited about a long-term partnership that we have with the Broad Institute of MIT and Harvard, specifically focusing on cancer cell biology and this notion of how do we think about cell states in cancer beyond just the genomic measurements of point mutations and alterations that are in DNA, but how to actually use AI to learn representations of cells as a whole and how they interact with other local influences in their microenvironment. And so we've launched a research collaboration with the Broad Institute called Project Ex Vivo that really kind of exemplifies this theme of bidirectionality. And in fact, we have a dedicated lab group and wet lab space at the Broad Institute where we can actually, as computationalists and AI scientists, go in and inform the design of experiments that are generating data and also validating the predictions of our models that we're developing. And I think that speaks to this core challenge for this next phase of AI for biology of how do we actually build synergistic relationships that are truly bidirectional, and use that as a catalyst to actually bring these modeling efforts to the biological lab. So that's something that's at a high level really exciting and really top of mind for me.
Awesome. That's really fascinating because like you're basically like like bridging the on the dry and the wet lab, right? So you're basically having the infinite loop start kicking in, having a discovery cycle kind of like really going on steroids. That's really fascinating.
Exactly.
So along that same line, Lily, you mentioned earlier, right? Like one of the sort of like the aspect that you've been focusing on is a lot of this kind of remote kind of sensing opportunity, right? That often, to some extent, like kind of addressing some of the kind of like gap that conventional clinical data collection may not have a high density. So kind of like similar question to you is like, what do you see as some of the major bottleneck, and what do you see as some of the key learning?
Sure, Huifeng. Yeah, continuous health monitoring has lots of advantage, but it does introduce significant challenges. Here, I will quickly go over 5 main challenges we've been looking at. First is achieving ease of use. Hospital-grade monitoring devices often require professional medical staff to operate, but in-home devices need to be very intuitive and user-friendly so that elderly people such as grandma, grandpa, can operate them independently. To address that, we are developing very simple wearable sensing, such as earphone sensing that require minimum user intervention. Second, we need to achieve high precision and robustness. In-home health monitoring devices are typically designed with cost efficiency in mind, and ideally they need to support non-invasive sensing. This makes it very challenging to achieve high accuracy and robustness. To enhance reliability, we are exploring hardware and software co-design. On the hardware side, we are developing advanced metal surface to dramatically enhance sensing resolution. Metal surface consists of many sub-wavelength cells, like shown here, and these elements are designed to manipulate waves in ways that conventional material cannot. By carefully designing the geometry and the material properties and spatial arrangement, we can enable metal surface to have very high flexible control over wavefront shaping and achieve high resolution sensing. On the software side, we are developing advanced machine learning algorithms to support multimodality data. Third is to increase sensing range and support mobility. Users expect continuous monitoring regardless of their location, so sensing should continue to work even when users are moving around throughout their environment. So we developed a metal surface-based approach to enhance the sensing range so that a user can be sensed even when they are far away or even when they are covered with blankets. Fourth is the mental state sensing and training. Continuous sensing does not just track a vital sign, but also provides real-time insights into a person's cognitive and emotion well-being. We are developing an approach to track a user's mental state. Meanwhile, we are also developing a large language model-based cognitive training tool that draws on each user's daily experience to reinforce episodic memory. This ensures these exercises not only feel relevant, but also engaging. We demoed that our cognitive training tool on last year's World Alzheimer's Day and received great feedback. And we think continuous at-home monitoring and tailored intervention can potentially improve cognitive care. Last but not least, achieving timely processing and energy efficiency. Because this continuous monitoring can generate a large volume of data that must be processed in real time on end user's device. So our team is actively working on edge computing and lightweight modeling to achieve low latency and enhance energy efficiency.
Wow, that's fascinating, Lily. Thanks so much for sharing. When I personally think about continual monitoring, the first thing come to mind is like the continual sort of like the glucose monitoring, right, for diabetes patient. But what you touch on are some of the cool sci-fi stuff, right? Like this meta surface, right? Like people maybe eventually can wear a shirt, right, to keep monitoring and also go beyond just metabolic, but also some of the mental and other. That's really fascinating. So I want to sort of continue towards like more and more sort of like kind of the clinical application, right? So Carlo, you earlier mentioned about sort of like really two themes, right? So one is like when we think about precision health, one of the marquee poster trial is cancer, right? So you mentioned some of the kind of like application side, like tumor board, trial matchings and so forth. You also mentioned another part, which is on the technological front, right? Like how do we go about some of this kind of like emerging modality like pathology, but also even like spatial omics, right? And also you seem to also touch on some of what Ava and Matt alluded to, like also eventually how do you put those multilingual, right, multi-model together? And so again, similar question is like, what do you see in both front, right? Application and technology front. What are some of the key challenges that you see that really keep you up at night, and what are some of your learning over the years?
So super exciting to hear from Ava and from Lily, the progress that you can make in basic science, and also on the, not on the patient, but on the at a personal level in collection of large data sets and so forth. On the clinical side, things are a little bit more challenging because we have a lot of overhead coming from the complexity of patient care, regulatory frameworks, and so forth. So the progress is great, but not always as great as I think as it could be. There are some sweet spots though that I feel are where we can move rapidly, and I think those have to do with the areas that are really of translation. So I'm thinking of clinical trials is a setting where we can move very rapidly and really make an impact. Biomarkers is another area where we can do the same. Real-world evidence is another area where things can move super rapidly. Having said that, I'm super optimistic about the impact of AI, even in routine patient care. I mean, I don't want to sound too worried about this. I think there's a very bright future ahead of us and almost inevitable. But I just wanted to acknowledge there's some complexities and some challenges in bringing these technologies to fruition in a conventional setting. And all of those can be, overcome, but they will require a big effort at multiple levels.
Awesome. And so kind of back to you, Matt, right? So as you mentioned, right? So you have this really amazing kind of almost like panorama kind of view, right? From academic, right, to industries, and now really leading our kind of like scientific effort on our product health and life sciences product division. So what do you see kind of like coming to see from all this angle, from foundational research, right, to partnership to productization? What do you see sort of like ultimately, how do we address some of this last mile, right? That some of like what Carlo mentions and so forth. How do we really make the AI counts, right, for patient care, right?
Yeah, I was kind of just reflecting on some of the comments around the incredible innovations that have been going on. This is just obviously, as you know, a small sample of some of the tremendous work that we see. And then I do my clinical time, and I walk by a fax machine in my office, right? So like there is a gap. There's no question about it. Carlo knows very well, and and at a macro scale, you can see it in sort of the conferences, right? You can go to NeurIPS and see some incredible things, and then you can go to the American Medical Association conferences and you see there is a divide. But I think that's closing, and I'm extremely optimistic. And part of it is, you look at successful applications of AI to solve a clinical problem, and I'll just use one example that many of the audience might be familiar with, which when you think about what are the immediate needs, like before we can get to the future state, the things we want to see happen, we have to almost have to put out the initial fire. And the fire, of course, is related to burnout, right? We have a crisis, obviously in the U.S., but certainly this is sentiment shared, I think, across the world. And clinicians have too much to do, too much complexity to sort of handle, and they're looking for some time back, if I'm being honest. And so, when I look at some of these technologies, I sort of say we're going to save lives before we save, or sort of going to save time before we save lives, I should say. And the DAX Copilot solution, if you've heard of it, it sounds very simple on its face. Maybe you wouldn't, present this as the keynote at a computer science conference, but yet it's solving an incredible problem. And what's interesting about it is by saving that doctor some time, you're also generating kind of a comfort level with, hey, this AI solution is actually making my life better. But it's also to the point about the last mile. It's also in the last mile. And from that place, can we build out there? So, just to use an example, Lily's talking about some biometrics. Well, there's a voice data that comes from that interaction that then gets transcribed into a note. Well, there's voice biometrics that we all are starting to become very familiar with. Well, now I can start to add that in, and now there's almost a foothold, right, into the real clinical world, and you're building from a place that the physicians are kind of congregating around, or at least familiar with. And so I'm extremely bullish, and that's outside of just the fact that maybe more so than ever, you've seen the New England Journal has an AI, new journal about AI. That is a huge sign to me that there is an absolute, Cambrian explosion of interest from the clinical side, not just sort of in the technology, but just how do we use this and how do we learn about applications for this? So maybe more so than ever, I feel like that divide is starting to really close.
Yeah, that's a really amazing insight, Matt. You mentioned about Dex Copilot, right? But also this whole field about kind of ambient intelligence, right? That it feels like, even just a couple years ago, right? This feel like a super kind of sci-fi novel concept that you could have like patient doctor talking, and then actually the computer actually take care of the note taking, right? And maybe even start to alerting some of the things that maybe the doctor have forgotten and so forth. That like even a couple years ago feel like so sci-fi, but now actually DAX have, right, like as you mentioned, have already taken so much kind of inroad, but also there is a lot of other kind of similar undertaking that really testify to how this notion that like the Gen AI revolution can really move things much faster, right? So that is so exciting. And also, I really love what you bring up about like save time before saving life, right? So like starting from sort of like productivity gain, then eventually we could really get to even the creativity gain, right? So that's super exciting. So I think we can talk for hours and hours, but I think we have some final chance to start to kind of elicit some of the other insight from you guys, and I think this will be a very fun run. So we'll basically ask each of you to make a prediction for the future, right? Like what might happen in 5 years, right? Like, and so Ava, can we start from you?
I have the hard job of going first to this question.
Or the easy one.
I think, honestly, we're at this incredible moment of a true inflection point in our capabilities with technologies like AI, and it's really impossible to predict exactly what's going to happen next. But I have my vision and ideas about what that landscape could look like. And so right now we've seen breakthroughs in our ability to use the power of generative AI and foundational models to learn over these individual biological modalities. So, for example, protein sequences like our work with EvoDiff, or pathology data like GigaPath and Virkov, and other biological modalities that are coming to the forefront. As an immediate step, I think we're going to see a shift in bringing this information together, right? To be able to reason across the scales and the hierarchy of biology, from the level of individual molecules to cells to tissues to patients, and try to, put this information together in from a modeling perspective and also from an application perspective. And then I think looking forward to a few years down the line, that hopefully that leads to this vision that you raised, Hoifang, of how do we actually bridge that iterative loop between the experimental world and the computational world, such that we have AIs that can help us propose new hypotheses and go test them in the lab. And I think that's something that I'm optimistic to see in 5 years. And hopefully that leads to drugs, therapies that are discovered or designed from scratch by AI and are put into preclinical or clinical testing. And I think that's a very real possibility to think about. And then finally, to close, I think this panel is really awesome because we have these different perspectives of, someone thinking about fundamental research at the biological scale like myself, and Lily with the perspectives on how do we interact with humans in their real lives and in kind of a cultural sense, and the clinical partnership with Providence, and the scaling perspective that MAP brings. And my ultimate vision is that 5 years from now we have a way as Microsoft to come together and put these pieces, like bring these pieces together to life to really create solutions at scale. And that's pretty high level, but I think that we're empowered to do that, and that's what I'm really excited about.
That's amazing. Like just to echo some of your point about like this kind of multi-scale learning, right? To bridge it between different scale of, by biological mechanisms and so forth, but also really to actually closing this loop, really the discovery and translation loop, right? So that's super exciting. So Lily, kind of like to you is like you highlighted this really important part to how can we fuel in some of this kind of modality that conventionally may not be collected, right? So like I'm curious your thought about in 5 years, right? Like what do you see could actually already happen, right? So will we have the meta surface of West, everybody?
Yeah, that's our hope. First of all, I'd like to express my deep appreciation for the opportunity to learn from Haifeng, Ava, Carol, and Matt, your perspective. And for continuous health monitoring, what I see is it's more than just a technology advancement. It's a paradigm shift in healthcare. So it means that healthcare is no longer constrained inside the hospital. It's everywhere, no matter where we are. Every step we move, every eye movement we make, every breath we take, every heartbeat we strike, every brainwave signal we generate is being sensed and analyzed to understand our health condition. And what we envision for the future is there will be no more travel, no more waiting room, no more frequent needle pricks, just timely virtual interaction with doctors, empowered by advanced sensing and AI. And this shift is not only meaning convenience, but also hope. So with the aid of continuous monitoring, even minor physiological fluctuation, such as slight rise in blood pressure or subtle change in heart rhythm or blood glucose level, can be detected before they escalate into life-threatening crisis. By continuously tracking each patient's state, doctor can tailor their treatments and adapt immediately rather than waiting on the test only taken during occasional hospital visit. So our vision is to put advanced diagnostic and treatment at people's fingertips so that they can use at home to make healthcare more proactive, personalized, and powerful than ever before.
Oh, that's amazing. Thanks so much, Lily. When I was posting this question about in 5 years, I was also thinking about how people constantly make those kind of joke about in 5 years, right? Like, and then obviously this day one of the hot topic would be AGI, right? So apparently, probably we'll get AGI before 5 years. But when we think about kind of like let's say cure cancer, right? So like I joke with my team that let's try to solve cancer before we get one, right? And so Carlo, I'm curious about sort of like what's your take in 5 years, like how close are we to start fundamentally understanding, cracking some of the cancer mechanism and like will we be there in 5 years, right?
Yeah, great question, and also hard to act to follow Ava and Lily's vision. But I don't know how close we're going to be in fully understanding cancer, but I feel very confident that we will look back to our current state as a dark age, because I do think the impact of AI is going to be transformational. That applies to both biology, as you heard before from Ava. I do think we currently generating so much data. And the capability of generating data is so large that we need AI to actually manage that. But it also goes, back to what Lily said. I do think in the future AI will interact with people before they go to see a doctor. From a medical perspective, they will drive. Actually, ideally, not even medically. This is just health, right? It will ideally drive their health and their behaviors from a health point of view. In terms of medicine itself, I do think that we will reach a state where physicians will not be allowed to see patients without a AI companion at some point. I don't know if that's going to happen in 5 years, but I do think it's going to be inevitable at some point. And lastly, vis-a-vis Matt, you're a radiologist, I'm a pathologist. I think pathology and radiology are going to fuse and merge. I'm not sure it's going to be great news for the radiologist, but I think all the imaging modalities are going to be one single, thing. And AI is going to mediate an interaction with the physicians and that kind of landscape.
Yeah, fascinating, and I think also, as Awa mentioned earlier, right? There are, besides from this existing conventional imaging modality, there are also a lot of this emerging, right? Like measuring cell states and everything, and then coupling all of them together, like it's kind of like incredible, kind of like microscope to some extent, right? So virtual microscope, but also like incredibly challenging because, like you said, right, the high dimensionality, the noise, and everything, and really sort of tailor make for AI to hopefully help, right? And so the really kind of like should we say $1 billion question and then $1 trillion question, right? Is like how can we actually really make this kind of viable, right? To sort of like really put this technology to eventually democratizing this high quality healthcare to everyone. So Matt, again, so really want to lean on you to kind of like with all your diverse kind of perspective, like what do you see would be happening in 5 years?
Well, I mean, I can at least predict that we won't have fax machines anymore. That's
Are you
one.
sure?
I'm willing to bet on that one. 5 years is hard, right? In this current environment, right? We're seeing some pretty surprising acceleration, right, in sort of the general purpose technologies. And I think you've heard from some of the speakers here. I mean, we are clearly, I think, advancing science at a pace that maybe at least I haven't seen in my career, right, in the last 20 years. So with that being said, I think that there's a couple things I really wanted to emphasize. One that Lily said that, I had a mentor once that said, he was the chair of a very prestigious department, and he always kind of would go to these ribbon cutting ceremonies when we're celebrating the opening of hospitals, and he always said, "Why are we doing that? Like, we should be celebrating the closing of hospitals. Like, we really should be advancing care to the point where a lot of these things are preventative, right? We're taking care of these things outside of the four walls of the hospital where errors can occur. There's all kinds of potential risks that go beyond just the conditions that you have, and obviously the complexity of that. So I do celebrate that, and I think that some of the steps in terms of how we scale to that point. I mean, one of them is it's not sexy to talk about, but it's data, and we've done a tremendous job, I think, for the most part, in starting to collect data and digitize data and to be able to manipulate in its individual modalities. What we haven't done a great job of is really leveraging that data to drive insights, even with what we have. This is beyond just sort of new data, new discovery. And I think in 5 years, I would be surprised if we don't look back and really facepalm at the idea that we were leaving all this data on the table, sort of in archives, and then only using it in episodic, taking care of a patient, and not using it for insights such as real world evidence. How can I find similar patients from practice-based evidence, right? And leveraging that decision-making from real world data. I think that is something that, we're really close to sort of, at least seeing the possibility or pathway towards. When it comes to some of, I think the connection between the biological space, and then I think, as Lily said, the wearable space, I think there's some connections there that, I would hazard to guess are really going to start to come into fruition. I'm thinking specifically about, less invasive monitoring over time, but then also tying that to, biomarkers that may predict early development of cancer and other chronic diseases. And then to Carlos' point, hey, I'd be great with partnering up with you in the reading room. We both love dark rooms, and we can work together to take care of patients in our dark rooms. I'm good with that.
Looking forward.
Well, that's incredible. Like one thing that Matt, you mentioned about that data, right? Like I kind of like learn from John Halemka, right, from Mayo, right? He mentioned that actually by some estimate, even today, right, 3 billion people in the globe already have many of their medical record already digitized, right? But when you think about it, it's like, what are we using those data, right? Right now, it's mostly like some immediate diagnosis, some billing, right? Then they are locked up in the attics and gathering dust, right? So to your point, like actually that's super exciting kind of opportunity from all of you. Is like Gen AI could potentially be able to understand the language of those data, multimodal longitudinal data, and then harnessing them to really for good use, right? So so this is amazing, and really thankful for all the panelists, right? So I think today, like I think we heard from like all the way from biomolecule, right, proteins, and all the way to continuous sensing, to patients and also from research to partnership to productization. So I personally learned quite a bit, and I feel even more energized. So thank you very much. And thanks for everyone for listening.